Okay, so everyone, uh, Bill is going to share with us his testimony, his life testimony here. And I just wanted to say that I think our life is always a testimony in some way. You know, what we live, the people that we meet, the people that we impact with our lives as well. This is always a testimony. And there are a number of people that are here together who have been a sort of testimony for me as well in my life because I met them in my childhood. And you know, God reveals sometimes later in your life how much people can make a difference. And I think I won't say more about Bill's testimony, but I can just say that he gave the testimony to us one day after one of the hikes on the car on the way back home, right? We were just three guys in the car. And when he gave that testimony, it was so powerful that I told him, hey, I really think it would be great if you could share that once with the larger group because it's about his life. And yeah, it's really powerful what God has made with your life. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I've never shared my testimony in front of so many people before. This is my first time. I usually just told a few people I've met under certain circumstances. But I guess I'll start off with my childhood. I grew up in a traditional Chinese family that was affected by the communist revolution. So that means we grew up without any religion because I guess the communist government wanted religion to go away. So my childhood I remember when I was very young, the closest thing I got to religion was like when I had a fever, my mom would burn some incense and she would stick it in this like rice bowl and there'd be a Buddha statue and there'd be some water. And then she'd ask me to drink that and that was supposedly help my fever go away. So I never grew up with any religion. And at the age of 7, I moved to the United States. And I remember as a child growing up in the 90s, I had more of a concept of Christianity. And it really was annoying to me. Like, because on the TV shows, you would see people, I remember you see like a pastor, he'd go around and touch someone and people would just fall over and they'd ask for money, right? And so that was my impression of what Christians do. And as I grew up, I think I encountered a few Christians in my life and I've never really wanted to talk to them because I think I may have had a few encounters where they're trying to tell me about Jesus. And to me, that was just a silly thing. Like, why would you believe in something so long ago when there's so much scientific evidence? But anyways, I grew up kind of in that mindset and I was the only child at home. My parents always raised me up to be the son who was going to accomplish a lot because everything was on my shoulders. Yeah? They're immigrants to a new country and they were hoping that I could be some kind of CEO and feed the family. So I grew up, I went to college, did everything that I was supposed to do. And I remember that I got married at quite a young age. Well, it's young nowadays, it's 25. But me and my wife, we were married 5 years. I was doing well in my career, and I was sent abroad as an expat to China. And I remember after having our first child, I remember the relationship between me and my wife was starting to change. Actually, it was almost overnight. I don't know if you guys ever experienced that, but like as soon as your wife has that first baby, your status all of a sudden is like the lowest. Yeah, and that's how I felt. And I remember it took a toll on our relationship, and I was looking for attention outside of marriage. As I started to explore that outside, getting attention outside of marriage, and that was just the beginning of my marriage. It was starting to go downhill. Also, my relationship with my parents, I didn't really have a lot of time for them because I was busy, but I also had the language barrier. I grew up speaking Chinese, but I just couldn't express myself as well in Chinese language. So whenever they called, I didn't want to talk very long. I just passed the phone to my wife because then she could give them an update on what's happening. And also, my relationship with friends changed because we were expats, and I knew that my job would change every 2 to 3 years. Therefore, it didn't make sense to really make friends or invest in a relationship locally when you know you're going to move in 2 or 3 years. So all of my friends were kind of basically from work, and work was my number one thing. And I just remember having the second child. Work was my career was doing really well. We were in Singapore at the time. I was still going out almost every weekend, going to the bars with friends. I was smoking a pack a day at that time, and just living my life as if there's nothing else to life, And even though I told myself that, yeah, this is it, once you die, you're dead, and the only reason why I'm alive is to live up to the responsibilities of being a good son and providing for my children, right? That's what I thought the meaning was to living. But deep down inside, I always knew, like, even though I don't like Christians, I don't like the concept of Christianity, deep down inside, I always knew, I had a feeling that there was more, like there was a creator. I believe that there's a creator, but there's no way you could get to know him, because if there's something so powerful to create this universe, there's no possible way you could get to know him. And it's silly to believe in this blonde-haired European-looking guy as Jesus, as God. So I totally did not believe that. And I was embracing being an atheist as well. Like sometimes I would be prepared to debate against Christians if they want to tell me about their belief. So I was not into that at all. But then in about 2018, I remember, my marriage wasn't going well, and I remember my wife, she was looking through my phones one day, and she found out that, I had this other relationship outside of our marriage. And obviously she was extremely, extremely heartbroken and angry. Like, I had never seen her so angry before. And we had a serious talk, and I remember I just felt like it's the end of the world. I felt like this is the end. This relationship is going to be gone because she'll never trust me again. We will get divorced. What do I have to live for? Maybe I could find another marriage, but then I knew that if I did that, I would end up being in the same cycle and being unhappy after a certain time. And I remember I was on my balcony. I was in Singapore. I was looking out. We live in a high skyrise in a huge apartment. I was looking out. I was thinking, maybe I could just jump off of here because it would just end everything really quick, and I didn't have to deal with all that. But then I thought, well, what if, who's going to take care of my children? And then I thought, if I land in that pool down there, I might not die, and that would be even worse. And I was really just didn't know what to do, and I started trying to call like a therapist in Singapore, and no one had any time to talk to me. I luckily I found this app where you could talk to like a virtual therapist, and just the process of signing up for the account, I felt like I was talking to someone, and that made me feel better. But I remember just realizing that I was such a horrible person, and I needed to change, and I was trying to get my wife to believe in me again. So I made a checklist of what I would do to become a good husband for her, because that's the only way I knew how to get things done, is have a checklist. So I even wrote things like, I'll do the dishes, I will call your mom every 2 weeks, and it was like a list of 8 or 9 things, which was really hard for me to do. And I remember I would always stumble and not be able to accomplish those things, and I still could not quit my habits. I was still texting with other women that I knew. And then it happened again, and she found out again that I was texting someone. And she had told me that if you ever do that again, then it's over, right? And so it was like one of those days where I woke up in the morning and I had forgotten that I texted someone because I was so drunk the night before. And she was just furious. I was like, what happened? Anyways, that was like the end of the line for her. And she said that, it's summertime, kids are out of school. She's going to take the kids and they're going to go and spend the whole summer with her friends while she thinks about whether or not our marriage should continue. And at that time, I was still trying to change myself. I was still going to work. I said, okay, you guys do what you need to do. I still need to go to work. And I remember going to work every day early in the morning to meditate. And there's like these apps that help you meditate. So I was trying to follow that. And there was this one guy that walked in my office. He was this new guy that I hired. And we had our monthly one-on-one discussion, and he came in. And he's like, oh, you're here quite early. I said, yeah, I come here to meditate. Otherwise, I cannot get through the day, how stressful it is. And then he said, I also meditate when I drive to work. I said, that's impossible. You'd be crashing into the wall. And then he said, well, actually, I talk to God, And, and I remember saying, yeah, you're a smart guy. I hired you. I know you're a smart guy. You're an engineer. How can you believe in God of the Bible when there is so much fossil evidence around that there is no such thing? And then he said, well, if you believe that there is an ultimate creator, someone who created everything, it is possible that there could be fossils, because anything he could create. And so I thought, well, that was a good response. And I didn't feel any pressure from him. And he started telling me about the church he goes to. And he kind of caught my attention by saying, oh, the pastor is from the US, but he has a Chinese last name. And I said, oh, that's interesting. He said, you can come check it out if you want. And I had nothing to do because my wife was out of town. And I was I was researching other religions as well, Buddhism and Islam and Christianity. So I thought, I'll come and check it out. And I remember going to the church the first time. I didn't know what to expect. So I was dressed up. And I quickly realized no one was dressing up. Okay, well. And then I went in there and it was just very strange for me. My first interaction at a church was just a lot of people would stand at the same time and they would sing. And then they would sit down and someone would say something and they would stand and sing again. And so it was really odd. And I didn't feel anything except I just felt like this is a whole group of people who don't know about me, who don't know my past. And I could just be comfortable where I am. But I had questions. So one of the first things I did is I went to the men's group. They had a men's group on Wednesday nights. That's where I met Bob eventually. And so I went there and there was 5 or 6 guys and they're all they look like they're retired or close to retirement. And I said, look, I'm not a believer, but I have a lot of questions that hopefully you can answer. And they're like, oh, we're not sure, we don't have all the answers, but you're welcome to join us. And I asked them all the tough questions I had that were never been able to be answered by anyone. And they weren't able to answer them either. But what I did notice is through that interaction with those Christian men was that there was some kind of a peace about them. I could see it in their faces that they just lived a life that was not full of worry and dread. They were just very lighthearted. And then that's what got me to continue coming back, because I wanted to get to know and get my questions out. And the second time I went to the church, I remember something was different. It was the pastor, all of a sudden I could hear what the pastor was saying, and it was making sense. It was before, if you first go to church, there's a lot of words that they say, words like Christian words like covenant and anointed, all these words that you typically don't hear in English and just don't know what it means. But the second time I went, I felt like the guy was speaking in normal language and he was speaking directly to me. And it was oh, it's really strange. I could follow and I could agree what he was talking about. And I remember during the songs, I felt really emotional and I had to really control my tears. I didn't know what was happening. And when I got home, I sent an email to a friend who is a Christian, one of my few friends who was a Christian. I told him what's happening. I said, why do I feel this way? And he said, it must be the Holy Spirit stirring inside you. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. That's just another thing that Christians say that we have no clue. But I know what that means now. And I remember just going to the church because I felt a sense of peace being with the men and also being at the church. And pretty soon my wife came back. She came back from her trip, and things were still not well, but I was living in a way where I didn't feel so heavy every day trying to be a good husband. And I remember it was like a few weeks later, she told me that she felt I had changed. And I felt it was very strange because I didn't try to do my checklist anymore. I wasn't trying to do anything, but she said I had changed. And then shortly after that, I remember having a dream about going to dinner, and there was someone at dinner who did something that was very irresponsible that resulted in my daughter being poisoned, you know? And in my dream, I was furious at this person, and I just really wanted to beat them up. But then I remember in a dream, a voice told me, oh, you're a Christian now, and because God has forgiven you, you have to forgive others. And so I did that in my dream. I actually honestly forgave the person in my dream in a way that I had never forgiven anyone before. And then when I walked up to give that person a hug, I saw that person's body was the same as my dad's, you know, and I saw the scars on his body, and I suddenly realized that this person wasn't trying to harm me and my family. They were trying to do their best, but they were failing. And I remember it was my dad. I woke up just sobbing. My whole pillow was completely wet. And the amount of hatred and anger I had for my dad was just like melted away. It was the first time I actually experienced what it's like to forgive someone. And I had all this anger for him because of the way he was so verbally abusive towards my mother when I was growing up. I always held a grudge against him. But after that night, things changed between me and my dad. And I called him a lot after that, and he was like, what's wrong with you? Something has changed. My parents both thought that something weird happened because I was calling them proactively and talking to them. And so, you know, long story short, all these small things started happening, changing in my life, and it was after the one night that I received the Lord. I remember reading a little book about how to believe in Jesus, because that was another question: how do I really follow Jesus? How do I believe him? And it was very simple: just read this prayer and believe in it. And I remember when I read through that, I honestly felt like I need to repent. Like it felt good to tell God that I am a sinner and I can't do anything about it, and I needed his help. I needed Jesus. And ever since that, things were a lot easier. And another miracle that happened is my wife, somehow she has forgiven me for all the things I've done in the past. And even I probably can't forgive someone that easily who has cheated on me, you know, and having children like that. But for her is definitely a miracle because she's very insecure. She doesn't trust a lot of people, and she has forgiven me completely. And since then, we had a third child, and now we're expecting a fourth. And so, you know, God continues to bless us, today. She's still not a Christian yet, although she kind of lives like a Christian, but she still hasn't crossed the hurdle of accepting Jesus. She believes that he died, but it's hard for her to believe that he rose from the dead. But also since then, my father has accepted Jesus as well, and he was baptized about 2 years ago. Yeah. So that's my story. I don't know if you guys have any questions. All right, thank you.